Welcome back to math class today. Before you get started on the warm-up, I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about our learning goals for today. First, we want to identify fractions and their equivalent values on a 10 by 10 grid. Next, we want to represent fractions on a number line. In fact, you're going to be doing that right away in the warm-up. We want to estimate fractions using benchmark fractions. And we want to estimate sums of fractions using those benchmark fractions. So 4 success criteria for us today. Our key term is benchmark fractions, and we're going to get started with a number line in our warm-up. Your first task is to locate 1/2 on this number line. Then we're going to talk about how did you find that value. Pause the video and hit play when you're ready to talk about the warm-up. All right, so you probably used a lot of different strategies to find 1/2 on this number line, and I'm sure you found it. It's right here. This is where 1/2 would be. Here's one strategy that you might have used. If you used this strategy, you might be a math teacher in the future. This strategy uses equivalent fractions and recognizes that 1/5 is the same thing as 2/10. 2/5 is the same thing as 4/10. 3/5 is the same thing as 6/10, and 4/5 is the same thing as 8/10. Now, what about 1/2? How many tenths is that? Well, 1/2 is the same as 5/10. So that means it would go right here, between 4/10 and 6/10. But there's a lot of other ways that you could have solved this. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video again and share out your ideas as a class. How did you do it? It's not even wrong to say I just kind of put my finger there and said, that looks about like 1/2. Whatever you did, share it, talk about it with the class, and let's think about different ways to think about fractions and number sense. Okay, I hope that you had a great discussion about the different mathematical strategies you used. Let's look at today's essential question. Our essential question today is, how can you use grids and number lines of common fractions like 1/2, 1/3, and 1/4 to estimate the value of other fractions? You guys have already used fractions like 1/2 and 1/3 and 1/4 a lot when you were in elementary school. Now you can use those. They are very helpful for estimating the fractions that we will work with today. And we're starting out with these grids. So your first task is to look at these grids and think about what fraction each one of them might represent. I want us to look at this one together as a class really quick. What I'm going to do is count up the number of shaded squares. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. There are 50 squares shaded right there. This represents 50. Now, this is a 10 by 10 grid, which means that it's a total of 100. So my entire square right here would be 100. So what fraction is this? Well, this fraction is 50 over 100. There are 50 shaded squares. There are 100 total squares. And that simplifies to 1/2. What I want you to do is use that same process to work with a partner and figure out what the other grids represent. Pause the video and spend 5 minutes figuring out which fraction each of these grids represents. You've hit play, so you must be ready to talk about it. In the first square, we have 0 out of 100. That's just 0. In the next square, we have 25 shaded squares out of 100. 25 out of 100 is like a quarter. It's the same as 1/4. We already did 1/2. Here we have 75 over 100, which is the same as 3/4 or 3/4. And then finally, 100 out of 100, which can also just be written using the number 1. So we have 0, we have 1/4, we have 1/2, and we have 3/4 and just 1. And these are all very common fractions that we would use. In fact, we would call them benchmark fractions because they help us determine the value of other fractions when we're estimating. Now, let's see how we can use a number line to represent fractions. This first number line is pretty straightforward. we need to label fourths. Go ahead and pause the video and work with your partner to label fourths on this number line. Be sure that you plot the fractions 1/4 and 3/4 on your number line. Well, you've hit play, so I hope you had a good discussion with your partner. If you're not quite ready, hit pause again and talk a little bit more before hitting play and talking about the number line as a class. You divided the number line into fourths. So we have 0, we have 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4. Now you might be thinking, well, Miss Johnson, where would 1/2 go? What do you think? Where would 1/2 go? Right here, right? This is the same thing as 1/2. But I wrote 2/4 because the direction said to label the number line to represent fourths. But I know that 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2. Now here's a question for you. How does this number line connect with the grid representations that we looked at? Remember our grids? There they are. How is this number line related to those grids? Good job. You noticed that each grid corresponds to a value on the number line. This grid is the same as 1. This grid is the same as 0. Here's 1/4. Here's 2/4, or 1/2, and here's 3/4. These are just pictorial representations of ratios that we can represent on a number line. Of course, the number line doesn't have to just have fourths. It can have whichever denominator you choose. So here I want you to spend 5 minutes working with a partner. Go ahead and set a timer. Pause the video, and with a timer, I want you to complete these 3 number lines in parts A, B, and C. Now that you've tried these number lines a little bit on your own, let me show you my process. My first step, for example, working with the twelfths, is just to divide the number line into 12 pieces. Once I've divided it into 12 pieces, it's easy to count to locate each fraction that I'm supposed to represent. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, that's the wrong one. Hang on. Let me move it. Boop. Now we'll get it in the right spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 5/12. It helps to double check your work, doesn't it? Now let's do 11/12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Here's 11/12. 1/12 is easy. And 7/12 is easy because it's just 2 further than 5/12. And if I wanted to, I could label the rest of the points too. But those are the 4 values that we were asked to label on here. And you can always use these steps when drawing a number line. First, divide your number line into the number of pieces that are listed in your denominator, into the number of sections that you see in your denominator, and then count using your numerator to see where each fraction belongs.